There is a future world where the concept of labor is simply obsolete. A world where the machines we built finally do everything. They manage the logistics, design the products, grow the food, and even discover the science. For the vast majority of humanity, the long historical burden of work has been lifted. This isn't a distant fantasy, it is the logical destination of the path we are on. And it sounds like a utopia. But what if this utopia has a cost we haven't considered? What if, in solving the problem of labor, we create a new invisible form of feudalism? A society built on perfect comfort and sustained by perfect control. The question is not whether we can build this world. The question is what happens to us when we do. We have been told this is a story about technological unemployment, that the rise of artificial intelligence will be a race between humans and machines, and for a time that will be true. Reports from firms like Goldman Sachs estimate that generative AI could impact up to 300 million full-time jobs globally. A McKinsey analysis suggests that as much as half of all work activities could be automated by the middle of this century. But this focus on the race against the machines is a distraction. The true story begins after the race is over, when the machines have already won. It is a story of power. It begins with a simple practical solution to mass unemployment. It solidifies into a new economic law that quietly separates humanity into two distinct classes. And it ends in a future that looks less like a science fiction dystopia and more like a return to an ancient social order. The process begins subtly. It does not happen all at once. First, AI automates specific tasks, not entire jobs. Think of a loan officer at a bank. The AI first takes over the credit analysis. Then it automates the paperwork. Then it learns to conduct the client interviews. One by one, the tasks that make up the job are absorbed by the system until the human is no longer a participant but a spectator. This will not be a crisis for one industry, but a quiet revolution across all of them. It is a force that will create what economists call skill polarization. High-skilled jobs that require deep creativity and critical thinking may remain for a time, their value increasing. But the vast middle, the millions of administrative and logistical jobs that form the backbone of our economy, will simply dissolve. This creates an unprecedented social crisis, a world where a significant portion of the population is no longer economically necessary, and the most logical, humane, and perhaps only solution is to pay people to exist. This is universal basic income, or UBI, an idea once considered fringe, but which may become the new social contract in an automated world. The common fear is that a regular, unconditional income would make people lazy. But the evidence we have from real-world experiments paints a very different picture. In Germany, a major UBI pilot program provided individuals with a monthly stipend, no strings attached. The recipients did not stop working. In fact, they reported a significant decrease in anxiety and stress, giving them the psychological freedom to think beyond the next paycheck, to learn a new skill, apply for a better job, or even start a creative project. But the largest real-world test of this idea was conducted by the organization Give Directly in rural Kenya. This wasn't a small trial. It was a 12-year study across hundreds of villages and thousands of people. The results were not what the skeptics predicted. There was no increase in spending on alcohol or tobacco. Instead, people used the money to invest. A family might buy a cow, providing milk for their children and a future source of income. A farmer could finally afford a metal roof to replace their leaky thatch, protecting their home and their harvest. These weren't just individual gains, they created a ripple effect. The money for the new roof went to a local builder. The money for the cow went to a neighboring farmer. A study of the program found that for every dollar a recipient received, the local economy grew by nearly $2.50. The conclusion from these studies is clear. A basic safety net doesn't remove the incentive to work. It removes the crushing weight of day-to-day survival, the very desperation that can stifle risk-taking and innovation. On the surface, UBI appears to be the perfect solution. It ensures social stability, eradicates poverty, and allows humanity to benefit from the immense productivity of its automated systems. But beneath this stable surface, it allows another, more powerful economic force to take hold. The French economist Thomas Piketty identified a fundamental law of capitalism. He found that when the rate of return on capital is greater than the rate of economic growth, wealth inequality is not an accident. It is a mathematical certainty. He called this the principle of R greater than G. In our automated future, capital means owning the AI systems, the factories, the software, the infrastructure. The return on this capital would be astronomical as it generates nearly all economic value. Meanwhile, economic growth, once driven by human productivity, would stagnate for the majority of the population who are now outside the system, living on UBI. The result is a silent, relentless feedback loop. Those who own the machines will see their wealth accumulate automatically and exponentially. This isn't a radical break from the present, it is the logical endpoint of a path we are already on. Today, in nearly all nations, the richest 10% of the population already own more than half of all wealth. In the United States, that number is over 70%. An automated economy doesn't create this trend, it calcifies it. It builds a system where social mobility comes to a halt and wealth is passed down not as money, but as ownership of the system itself. How should we feel about this divide? Is a world with a permanent, automated aristocracy necessarily bad? From one perspective, this two-tiered world is not a dystopia, but a kind of utopia, a world where poverty has been solved, where the vast majority of people are safe, healthy, and free from the anxieties of survival, cared for by an efficient and productive system. It is a world of peace and stability. But what is lost in this gilded cage? When one small group not only holds the wealth, but also the keys to all future innovation, the rest of humanity ceases to be the author of its own story. They become well cared for passengers in a vehicle they cannot steer. The Great Divide is no longer just about lifestyle or possessions. It is a divide of agency. The power to decide what problems to solve, what worlds to build, what future to create, would rest in the hands of a tiny few. If that spark of ambition, the need to author our own fate, is extinguished for the majority, the full picture of the year 2200 comes into focus. It is not a world of robotic oppression. It is a world that has split elegantly and quietly into two distinct humanities. The first is the vast majority, living comfortable but curated lives, passively cared for by a system they do not control. The second is the new automated aristocracy, who are not merely wealthy, but relevant, their lives defined by the very agency the rest have lost. And in this world, the critical question is whether the gilded cage is locked forever. Upward mobility would likely no longer be a matter of hard work, but a choice between two extremes: being gifted the keys to the kingdom by the machine for being an exceptional talent, or prying them from its hands by force in a digital rebellion. This reveals the ultimate nature of the divide. It is an inequality not of wealth, but of purpose. And it forces us to recognize that the future we should fear may not be one of suffering, but one where human ambition itself becomes obsolete. But this future is not inevitable. It is a choice. The technology of automation is a tool, not a destiny. And the defining question of our time is not just about its ownership, but about the future of the human spirit. Do we design a world that prioritizes stability above all? Or do we build one where the power to create and the need to shape our own destiny remain an untamed and open frontier for everyone?